So I know I'm the last speaker of the day, kind of in the way of raffle tickets, in the way of getting booze. So I'll try to get us through this in the most expedient fashion possible. But thanks for coming. So my talk today is on culture and collaboration in DevOps with a sprinkling of Atlassian. A little bit about myself. I started doing development in the late 90s. Yeah, and I was a Smalltalk developer for a few years. Moved into Java, when it was 1.1, and then 1.2 came out, and it was pretty exciting stuff. So did that for a long time, but in about 2003, 2004, I started using the Atlassian tools to do my job. Got pretty excited about doing that, and that's all I'm doing today is helping teams understand how to use tools, how to apply process, and obviously DevOps is a subject near and dear to my heart as a former developer as well. Okay, oh boy, hold on, the mouse does it. Okay, so what we're going to do is just a quick half an hour. So we're going to go through the state of software, talk kind of a little bit where we are, just framing the problem a little bit, how to start your DevOps journey, and then we're going to focus in a little bit on culture. Go down that route. Okay, so a few years ago, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this quote, software is eating the world. I think this was probably 7 or 8 years ago that Mark Anderson came out with this quote. And it's really a statement about how every company is in the software business. I mean, that's kind of a cliche right now. Everybody knows, no matter what you do, there's a software component to driving your business, delivering value to your customers. So really, it's more about, how do we keep an eye out to make sure that, hey, maybe we work at a large hotel chain. Who saw Airbnb coming, right? It's that kind of innovation that, when you're thinking about traditional industries, they're trying to stay ahead of that game as well. And to revise that, it's more software is programming the world, right? So software is a really cool place to be now. There's so many opportunities. We talk about Internet of Things. We talk about just traditional applications. A lot of things are happening out there in software. Make sure I hit the right button. Just to kind of build on that, every industry is software first, right? You see these kind of large iconic brands. You think, these brands, well, except for Starbucks, and probably Nike, go back, 50 years. But they are software companies, right? They are, I think the largest software company is Chase, right? JP Morgan Chase. They have tens of thousands of software developers, right? I don't know what they're doing, but they're writing a lot of code. But all of this is, and I'm sure you guys see it in your own industry as well. Cool. So now that everybody's in software, software development has changed dramatically since when I started doing it. We think about the way teams work, the way teams interact. It's really about how do we build better code faster, less bugs, and get that code out there. So we started down this journey of Agile, right? Agile is awesome. So this is from a survey that Atlassian did. It's about 1.5 years old, so I would expect these numbers to be trending up as opposed to going down. Hopefully that echoes true with you guys. But from a perspective of the way we write and develop software is evolving, and Agile, 77% of 17,000 participants surveyed are using an Agile methodology. And it's kind of broken down there by team size. So it's not just large organizations or small organizations, it's across the board. All right, we take that and say, okay, well, what's one of the other great innovations that have happened? And it's when we talk about Git, you see very similar numbers, right, across there. And it's really important as we start to talk more about how we're moving into the DevOps space. I don't know if anybody's written a bunch of code and had to do merges on SVN or CVS, and how much fun that can be. That can be your whole weekend. It's somebody's job. They had a build engineer that would spend time trying to resolve all these changes. Well, Git's one of those innovations that allows us to move closer and closer to a DevOps, right? Okay, so we're doing software using some of our modern techniques. We're doing Agile. We're using distributed version control system like Git. But maybe we're still seeing some of these things, right? We're seeing incident response times exceeding our SLAs. Our infrastructure's on fire, right? friction between the dev and ops team, right? You guys know the problems. It's probably why you're here, to talk about it and figure out how to get past this. But really, I mean, it's inherent to the silos within our organization, and that's part of the culture, right? Our culture is, hey, we have lines of organization, we have lines of responsibility across our teams. We're going to have a dev team, right? That's where we jam all our developers in there, and then when they write their code, maybe they throw it over to a QA team, right? And then they throw it over to an ops team, right? And that's a lot of organizations are still operating in this, and breaking down these kind of barriers is kind of key, and that starts with a cultural transformation. So, obviously, I think everybody in the room could answer this, but what's next after Agile? So just because we have Agile, we still have a lot of these same problems, right? And so that's why we're going into a DevOps environment. So I love this definition. I don't know if this is the official definition, but to me, DevOps is a culture. It's not a tool. It's not a practice. It's not a methodology. It's a culture, right? So to me, culture is at the very foundation of DevOps. And I'd argue the same is about Agile. Now, there are Agile methodologies, but you have to go through a cultural shift to adopt an Agile methodology in your organization. So to make it less squishy, you build it, you run it. So this is from Werner Vogel's from Amazon. But basically, this is the great summary, which is you have when I was doing development, it's like, great. I'd worry about, hey, do I have the cleanest code? Are my comments good? And then I throw it over, and I don't care that 10,000 people are going to hit this within the next 5 minutes, right? So when you start to think about how your code's going to run at scale, how it's going to run across the organization, right? That starts really getting into your head as a developer as well on how you're going to deliver software. So when we talk about some of these shifts, the DevOps kind of shining example. So we've got Netflix, right? Doing up to 100 releases a day. You look at something like Amazon, where they're doing 50 million deployments a year. I mean, all of that's great, but then it starts to cloud your brain, like, oh my God, how are we even going to get there? And so the answer is, that may not even be appropriate for what you're doing, right? So defining what DevOps means to you and to your organization and to the culture of your organization might mean, hey, we're going to do releases weekly, right? That's a really big step. You don't have to get to the 100 releases a day, 50 million releases a year, right? Okay, so we know we want to get there. So what are some of the steps we have to do along that journey? So when I think about it, DevOps comes down to flow. And so for me, really, it's flow is I start at point A, which is an idea in my organization, and how do I get it to point B, which is production, right? That's a big, long journey, and that's a journey that is different in your organization, it's different in my organization, it's different in your organization. It's a different journey for everybody, but it really, conceptually, we all get that, is how do we take something that either has business value to our organization that we want to push out and get out into production. Okay, so if we agree that we're trying to get that flow, we kind of come back to Gene Kim's example of when he talks about DevOps of the rule of three. So his rules, and I want to apply this to when we talk about flow. So how does this map to flow? So the rule of three of systems thinking. So how do we make work visible across groups? How do we make sure that we limit work in progress, reduce handoff times? How do we really start thinking about what we're doing as a system, not as individual units? And so when we think about that in a flow perspective, we talk about that as knowing the flow. So meaning everyone has access to the work, everybody knows what actions to take, so it's a very well articulated thing within our organization. So we understand this flow. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Amplify feedback. So when we amplify feedback, what we're really wanting to do is when things happen, it's not a finger pointing, you broke this, you broke that kind of game. It's really, hey, here's what happened. How do we learn from that as an organization? How do we move forward to that? And so for me, that's more about control the flow. How do we get all of that information out there that everybody can see, everybody can make strategic decisions upon, and then act as an organization? Did it again. Uh, so continuous feedback, obviously we want to be able to do continuous experimentation. It's okay to fail. We want to fail fast. We want to get out there, put our code out there. We want to get feedback right away. We don't want to go into months and months of analysis. But once we do that, when something's broken, how fast can we get a fix out, right? So we want to improve that flow and get it out there. The goal here is to know what is happening, how to control it, and where you can improve it, right? So that's really kind of what we're driving at. So as we start down this journey, this is kind of where we want to go. But what we want to know, or what we want to realize is, wherever we're at in our DevOps process in our organization, there are going to be people in the organization that don't want to go on this journey with us, that don't necessarily even care, so there'll be resistance along the way. And I would say we want to kind of fight that a little bit with not addressing it right away. So the biggest way to get people on board is success breeds success, right? So I wouldn't spend too much time on the distractors. I would find your champions within the organization and start moving forward that way. Which leads to the second point, which is if you're down this DevOps journey, which is good, it better be from a leadership perspective, everybody's got to be on the same page. So from the top of the organization, it can't be, great, go do this DevOps thing, it's cute, tell me when you got it done, right? But they can't have the same behaviors of something's broken, I want heads to roll, tell me who broke what, right? That's when you got to push back and say, look, this is not how DevOps works. We're okay to fail, and you have to have that at the highest leadership level. So part of going on that DevOps journey is making sure that the organization is going to do it, or at least your management up the chain is going to support you on that. So, and that really does work around culture. The last thing is DevOps is everyone's job, right? So to pull it back to Agile, if we go and hire a Scrum Master, doesn't mean we're Agile. If we go and hire a director of DevOps, doesn't mean we're DevOps, right? It is that cultural shift. Everybody's on board. You know, much like Agile, our Scrum Master will help embrace the process, remove roadblocks, and get us going. That's what DevOps leadership will help do as well. It will help kind of frame the conversation, take you on that journey. But just because you have that person in your organization doesn't mean you can still fail pretty wildly with that in place. Okay, so the last piece. So we're going to start kind of focusing and narrowing in a little bit on culture, which is what the talk was promised to be about. So let's start doing that. If we had more time, we would kind of talk more about kind of this three-pronged approach, but we're going to focus in on culture. The other things, to me, when I think about rolling out DevOps in an organization is practices. So what are the things that we're doing on a daily basis, on a weekly, on a quarterly basis? So what are the behaviors that are within the team, within the organization that we're doing? So those are practices, independent of tooling, and then tooling. I think as engineers, a lot of us like to focus on tools first, and then think we'll drag the rest of it on. And I think this is much more in a sequential order on how you want to start thinking about things, is think about getting that culture into place first. So to me, this kind of sums it all up, which is, I'm going to get my mouse out of there, is building a culture of collaboration. So shared responsibility. So again, we want to, when the code breaks, it's not my fault, it's not your fault, it's the team's fault, which is okay. And fault might even be the wrong word, right? It's hey, we had a failure. Let's come together as a group, figure out what went wrong, and let's move forward from that. And that shared responsibility, everybody shares in the wins and the losses, right? We're not trying to hang anybody out to dry on that. Encourage transparency. So some of the things we're going to talk about is talking about how we start to get culture out onto paper a little bit so that we kind of know what's expected of the team. And that kind of transparency where you think that you're on the same page with people, but if you haven't written it down, if you don't make it part of your processes, if you don't make it how you talk and think about things, you will always find yourself kind of at odds, especially when things get contentious. So really encouraging that transparency, and how do you do that? Cross-pollination of teams is obviously what we were hinting at earlier, which is we're not throwing it over the wall to a silo. we're talking about getting people with the experience and the knowledge on the team and making them part of the same team. So on a development team, we have QA people on the development team. We have ops people as part of that team. So we're really holistically looking at deploying a solution with everybody on the same team, not just different responsibilities. And then effective communication. So teams talk to one another. So again, I think that really, to me, goes back to with encourage transparency. So there's a lot of communication back and forth. There's a lot of documentation just from team expectations. There's some rituals around the process for really getting that culture out and talked about amongst the team. Okay, so this is where Atlassian can help with culture and collaboration in DevOps. So I'm not here to sell you tools. So everything I'm going to show you has nothing to do with the Atlassian tools, Jira, Confluence, all that stuff. This is more about stuff you can download for free. And it's tooling that they use. Tooling is frameworks they use in how they work as a development organization. So they've exposed that out to folks and allow you to kind of use some of the methodology. It's kind of a nice peer peeking into how they do things. I think they're always in a unique spot where they're using their tools to write the tools, right? It's this kind of this circular thing, and it's kind of a neat way that they do it. So. The biggest one is this team playbook. So again, this is free. I don't even think you have to give them your email to get this thing. So you can just download it. But basically, the playbooks, let me make sure I got this right. You can use at an organizational level. You can use at an individual team level. But they're let's get a little more specific on it. So the playbooks are really broken down into two things: team health monitors and team plays. So team health monitors are exercises, are frameworks for you to say, hey, there's something not quite right about my organization. Like, I don't think we're really working well together, but maybe you don't know how to tackle that problem. Maybe you don't know how to have the conversation. So and we'll take a look at a couple of them, but there's basically a way to say, okay, if you're seeing these kind of symptoms in your team or your organization, here's a health monitor to kind of certify what you're thinking about. And then so if you get that validation that, hey, there's something not quite right on the team, that's where these team plays come in. So they have a bunch of plays, and they work out to workshops. They work out to kind of really touchy-feely things that as developers and engineers we may not be comfortable with, but they really do help to provide a framework to facilitate those conversations. So in the these are a couple of the plays, or sorry, 4 of the plays that are really, I kind of highlighted for a DevOps organization, DevOps team. So one of them, roles and responsibilities. It's a 90-minute exercise, and it's really working back and forth with the team, figuring out, hey, I assume your job is this, and I assume my job is this, and really challenging that and understanding. So getting people to get out there and really start to talk about how those things are. Rules of engagement, it's a 30 to 60-minute exercise to really codify the interaction on your team. I wouldn't use this at an organizational level, but it's really as a team, how do we work together? What are the things that we expect? And we'll actually dive into this one a little bit so you can kind of see how that feels a little bit. The pre-mortem is one I really like, which is, hey, we're starting down this journey of making this product or going through this feature. We're going to go through some big cycle where we're going to make something. Let's talk about all of the things that can go wrong, and either how we're going to avoid them or how we're going to rush to them faster so we can prove out that these things are going wrong and they're things that we actually want to address. So it's a really good exercise. It's a 90-minute exercise, but if you make it part, again, this is part of your practices and your culture practices, hey, let's get it all out on the table. And we can start to validate some of that. And then on the retrospective side, that's an agile concept, but it is one of those things where, hey, we've gone through this. You can do it after a sprint. You can do it after, let's do it once a month if sprints don't mean anything to us. Let's do it after something's gone wrong and understand. But it's really a framework for saying, what about our process is broken? And how do we improve that process? And how do we make changes going forward, right? Okay, so let's dive a little into the rules of engagement. And so really what it starts out with, how the playbook walks you through this is, what you want to do is you want to just start handing out sticky notes to everybody. And what you really want to understand is put some ideas about culture of the company, culture of the team on these sticky notes. And so here's some examples, right? Which is we grow through sharing, right? Even things like headphones on means no interruptions, right? So getting all of these things out in the team, and then you start to look for patterns. Like, okay, I think we're saying the same things here. What you're also going to do is, okay, these ones are all quick wins. I think we have consensus on the team, and so let's say we all agree to these things. But the ones where you really want to spend the time on is ones that are maybe contentious or not well understood. Like, we grow through sharing. Well, what does that mean? So, asking people to, hey, can you expand on that idea? What do you mean we grow through sharing? How do we think sharing is going to work? Let's talk through that. And really contentious ones like, hey, headphones on means no interruption. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, if I come over to your desk and I want to talk to you, like, don't shoo me away. Like, we're just bringing that up, and I think that will reduce a lot of the frictions in the team and understanding how you guys work together. So it's really, again, it's kind of the squishy, touchy-feely stuff, but it's once you start to have those conversations, everybody gets on the same board and same shared understanding on how we work together and how we're going to move forward as a team and as an organization. Okay, so some common DevOps hurdles. So when you're on this journey, here's some of the things that we've seen along the way. And I will admit that when I was going through my notes, these will look to be out of order. When I first made the slides, I liked the order, and then I hated the order like 5 minutes before the presentation. So the slides are in a little different order than what you think. But mindset. So people inherently don't like change. So that goes back to that first slide where I had to stop. Some people aren't going to change. It's hard, and really, as opposed to arguing with them as to why they should change, I would find another team to work with and say, okay, we're going to go on the journey, and let's find our big supporters and keep moving forward there. Analysis paralysis. So wherever you are on your DevOps journey, culture-wise, tooling-wise, there's so much information out there, right? And so being able to sift through it all and actually just start your journey, this is a tough one for a lot of people, just to say, okay, we're going to make a couple decisions, we're going to move forward, and you got to be okay with some wrong decisions, right? We're going to do this. Again, it's that fail fast, right? We're doing, not only are we doing it in our coding style, but we're doing it in how we're trying to run our dev teams and how we're trying to deliver software and DevOps, right? We know we're going to make some mistakes, and that's a great opportunity for us to learn and challenge assumptions and keep moving forward. Maybe. Security and compliance. So this is one where you will find the biggest roadblocks and red flags, depending on the size of your organization. In a large organization, a lot of times it's, hey, we need to do these 12 things through our change control process. And so maybe the people that are telling you that don't even know why. They don't know. They've been there, they've been there 5 years. Maybe the process was developed 10 years ago. Nobody can really tell you why. It's just always been the way it's been, right? So I think this is the one where having senior leadership on board can help you get through some of these hurdles, which is, okay, great, I understand we're in a highly regulated industry, and so let's go through these audit checkpoints, and let's think about different ways we might be able to meet them and still deliver code faster. That will be a big challenge. I wouldn't try to get too hung up on that one, because you could spin in circles on that one a lot. Again, we're going to make small incremental improvements. So I moved disparate tooling to last, because I don't really want to spend too much time on tooling, because again, that's another kind of hornet's nest of, there's a lot of religious debate around tooling in the dev world, and all I would say is, great, let's find some that work for the team. I was talking with Larry earlier. He had a great phrase, which is, it will be okay for two teams to use two different tools to solve the same problem if it brings value to the organization. So trying to get into that value mindset, right? What are the outcomes we want? What's the value it's bringing to the organization? And are we doing more work and more risk because of that? Those are the things you have to weigh. But I wouldn't spend too much time in disparate tooling. Obviously, we want to, as we mature, we want to try to get down to a smaller tool set. I wouldn't make that your #1 goal, though, for sure. Okay, so those are some of the hurdles. So as you're going down this, and hopefully these resonate with you guys from a cultural aspect as well, but we want to start climbing that DevOps mountain. So what are some of the tips along the way? And so this is where I really failed, because we have this shirt that says DevOps is a journey, not a destination. It's this awesome graphic, and it's not on my slide. So, but I mean, it's really important to know that, this is, again, we're not getting to DevOps. We are on this path, and we're going to make small incremental changes. We're going to make advancements. We're going to find allies within the organization. We're going to keep moving that ball forward. One of the hardest things to do is when you have that senior leadership on board, they say, great, well, when are we going to be at DevOps? And so that's where you're having to manage up and say, look, I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't know how much money it's going to take, but we're going to be on this for at least the next 18 months, right? And let's talk again in 6 months, and I'll let you know where we're at. Now, obviously, it's on you to perform and deliver. That's not a free check to go browse the internet, but it is one of those things that journey is different for every organization, and trying to figure that out is really art and science. It takes a lot of work. Okay, so DevOps collaboration. So again, searching out for other teams that have done it, but also being able to share those wins within the organization. So however you share information now, obviously being Atlassian fans, we do it through Confluence. But however you share out and let information be known of successes within the org, it's important to start sharing those out. I would just make sure, however you share it, try and get it to as many people as possible, hopefully not through an email, but something that's nice that people can revisit. And I'd also avoid things like propping yourself up, kind of chest thumping, like, look what we did, we're so awesome, right? You want to get consensus. You don't want people rolling their eyes at you. Be like, oh, these guys again, I hate these guys. All right, don't be those guys. This is just an example. So this is from Atlassian's internal Confluence site. So they do a lot of this. They do this all the time. This is, hey, here's what we're seeing within our team. These are wins that we're having. And it's out there for regular team consumption for people to get. Okay, 3 and 4. Hopefully 3 is something you guys are already doing, which is creating those cross-functional teams. We're not in siloed teams anymore. Hopefully that's the theme you're getting along the way, is we're not doing silos, but we're actually getting the same people on the same team organizationally. That's from a reporting structure, not just from an assignment standpoint. Tip number 4 is more about guardrails. So trying to set up either practices, tooling, technology that helps people guide them to the right decisions, make it harder for them to do the wrong thing. But again, you don't want to really be in the way of delivering value. Fake it till you make it. So a lot of this, once you've kind of got that cultural aspect going and you got the team on the journey, there's going to be a lot of questions, right? And so it's okay to say, okay, here's the tooling route we're going to go down. Again, I wouldn't get entrenched in a tool warfare on, hey, this is what works for us. Great, go ahead and do it. When I think about this, I think about how Netflix delivers software. So they have this idea that they call paved roads. And so they have a build engineering team that says, hey, you know what, if you're going to write your code and you're going to do it, here's how we would like you to do it. We have set up that you can write in Java, so we have a bunch of libraries for you. We have a build server for you. We have an enterprise stash version. This is a nice paved road, and we can help your team succeed down here. There is no mandate in the organization that everybody will write their code this way. They figure that if another team wants to not do the paved road, they have the responsibility to do all of the activities that this organization is going to make easy for them. They can take that on their own because they believe this new technology is going to make them able to deliver business value faster, right? So it's really more about, hey, let's set up some really good tooling, processes, workshops. Let's get people on the same page, but let's not necessarily dictate to them. And then build a foundation. So again, this is where I would say, that foundation would be that paved road. customize where needed. So again, allowing tools or allowing teams to say, look, this doesn't work for us. We want to do something different. Great, right? You know, I think it's very easy from a command and control structure that we want to have this very specific way IT works. And I think what we always have to remind ourselves is that we in the technology organization exist because there's business value of what we're doing. And there are teams that need business value faster. There are teams that want to get features out there that's going to help the company grow. And so great, we don't want to be in the way of that. We don't want to be in the way of innovation at our companies. We don't want to be in the way of progress. We don't want to be in the way of helping our company grow, right? We want to be able to provide that foundation, and hopefully through setting up culture, having those discussions of how we want to work, that shared understanding, like, hey, we're on this thing together, we will fail, it will be okay, because we'll recover and we'll keep going. That's really what we're guiding for. So this is the last thing. This is where you can go for a DevOps perspective from the Atlassian perspective. There's a lot of great tools, freebies in there. Again, a lot of it's tool agnostic, like, hey, here's some things you can do when you start thinking about this, which is really great. But that puts us at 3 o'clock. Cool.